Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the First Year Experience program. My name is Nicholas Balderas, and I will be your host today. Joining us will be Dr. Gregory Selber and Professor Joe Fuentes. I'm going to go ahead and let them introduce themselves, but I also want to announce that we do have our gurus here, Gerson, Salinas, and we have a couple of guests. So I would like to say to our guests, as we are going through the show, just go ahead and be aware that this is going to be a semi-live performance. And again, I'm going to go ahead and let my guests introduce themselves. Let's go ahead and start with Dr. Selber.
Hi there, everybody. My name is Greg Selber. I've been at the university for 20 years, and I've lived in the Valley since 1989. And I teach communication. I once did the university newspaper for about 15 years, and I'm actually still a practicing journalist still, too.
And thank you for joining us. Professor Fuentes?
Yes, sir. Thank you all. Thank you all again for having me. Really excited to be on here. Jerry was a former student of mine, dual credit student back in 2015, 2016. So it's great to see your students doing, going above and beyond. So currently I am a adjunct professor at Lone Star College. I teach political science. And I am the founder and CEO of Advantage College and Career Readiness Solutions. Basically very similar to what you all do. I actually earned my first stripes in the Valley. I was over there for about 12, 13 years. And I served as dual credit instructor, professor for UTRGV. And glad to be back home doing what I love in Houston. So thank you for having me.
That's awesome.
You're welcome. And today's conversation is actually going to be on voting. We're going to be talking about how to get yourself out there and be part of this civic duty that we all need to represent. And to open up the conversation, we're going to go ahead and maybe just talk about a general question, and it's about voter participation and why is it important. So, anyone can go ahead and start, but about voter participation, why is it important, and why do you think that more people are actually joining us this particular election year? We can go with Dr. Selber on that one.
Well, you say that voting is a duty, and I really truly agree. It's an obligation. You go all the way back to the ancient traditions of participation in civic life. But I always like to kind of couch it in other terms as well. To me, voting is a duty, but it's also a pleasure. It's an honor to be able to take part in the discourse and to make your voice heard. And, of course, some people parenthetically say, well, your vote doesn't count. Not necessarily true. Because to me, voting is something that is a pleasure. As my daughter just turned 18, and she's going to be voting in the elections for her first voting. And I tried to tell her, look, this is not something you have to do, but it's something you should want to do. Because if you have problems with the way things work, if you don't like the people who are there, then go make your voice felt. And I think that will establish a lifelong habit of participation and engagement, because, the government will work on automatic pilot if we don't do something about it. So now's our chance to have the pleasure and the honor of voting. That's what I would say.
Very true.
Right.
Well spoken.
And it's important to, like you're saying, build a habit, because most of us, I think we see the big ones like the presidential elections, and that's when we care. But there's elections going on every year, right?
Yeah. And so if it becomes a habit, then you don't just every 4 years you show up and send a tweet and go vote. The idea is to have everybody involved in how the institutions work, so that the press and the public act as a watchdog on the major institutions. I'm sure that Joe is a political science teacher. You know a lot more about that than I do.
And I can tell you, I look at it from a historical perspective, because I'm often asked the question, what happened? How did we get here? What's going on? You don't have to look far. It's embedded in our history, whether we like it or not. But we have to acknowledge it. And once you acknowledge it, it's like anything else. If there's an issue, a problem, we face it. We've seen this over and over and over again. This is why we say voting is, as you said, Professor Selber, it's a duty, it's an honor, it's a pleasure, it's all these things. And I always want to, add that it's a right. And this right wasn't granted to all of us, overnight. Everybody had to work for it, and this is why we say there's been all these movements throughout our history, and it's it just, as you said, again, it's your 18-year-old is voting for the first time. It's special. It's an honor. You know, we voted yesterday in Harris County. You're watching the news. I mean, Harris County is, I mean, it's ecstatic, you know, and I've never experienced anything like that. Going through a drive-through, it was awesome. I mean, you know, we were missing the pizza and the sodas, but other than that, I mean, you're in and out in your vehicle. I mean, what more could you ask for? It's hot, you know, you're in the AC. I mean, there's so many, you know, good things about it. And like anything else, I mean, they're placing all these, you know, these amenities, these opportunities for us. And this is why I keep telling my students, take advantage of it, whether it's college readiness stuff, whether it's voting stuff, all these things that are occurring, it's happening for a reason, whether we understand it or not. But the best thing about it is to understand it and to keep teaching that.
Did you get a sticker?
I did. I should have put it on my forehead. I was going to actually.
You know, the thing that stands out to me, guys, is that if you read the papers the other day, early voting, you know, which ends October 30th, by the way, note to the people, the numbers. Now, everybody wants to talk about turnout. You know, when the turnout is low, that tends to favor one side or the other. The turnout is not low. And the turnout is not low among people of color, I might add. And so this is going to be an interesting thing. It seems that the problem of 2016, and we will go without naming, has been solved in early voting because the numbers were lower. And in 2008, 2012, people voted like crazy. Young people voted. Yep. Minorities or people of color voted. And it didn't happen in 2016. I think that we saw the result one way or the other, positive or negative. So those newspaper headlines to me signify that this is, like you say, a unique moment. Every election is a unique moment. I mean, you know, historically, I mean, you know, suffrage 100 years ago, civil rights, there's all kinds of points on the curve. And this one is potentially another one of those plastic hours where the stasis tends to break up a little bit. And all of a sudden we're in a position where if we do all the right things and things we want to do, there could be some radical or drastic changes down the road. And that's what a lot of people are saying that they want. So if you do want that, let's go.
Yeah, very true.
And I think that was kind of covered in that article you had shared with me in The Atlantic, the article with George Packer, and they discussed on that idea of plastic hours and kind of how this, you know, it's about like a critical moment in our time and how it can kind of change, make drastic change, you know, for us. Could you just give us a little bit more information on that idea, the plastic hours?
Well, I tell my kids that you don't just settle for social media. Don't just settle for the newspaper or CNN. You've got to read the so-called highbrow opinion journals. And that's right and left. I give them the spectrum, man. They read The Nation, they read The New Republic, and they read commentary in the National Review. And some people are kind of look askance at having to read a right-wing journal. But my point is, let's know what everybody's saying, and then it becomes a math problem. So that if you know all the crazy, I was going to say crazy ass, but I didn't. I did. If you know all the stuff, then you kind of put it into a mixer and filter it through your own opinions, and you have a more wide-ranging opinion. So George Packer, by the way, if you haven't read any of his stuff, good Lord, I mean, if there's a smarter guy in the world, I don't know who it is. It certainly ain't me. But Packer is saying basically that, you know, change comes in cycles. And he mentioned the progressive era, which we've been learning about in class. You know, the combination of the labor unions and people like Eugene Debs, a socialist, and, you know, the social gospel of some churches. In other words, the groundswell was there because something had to be done about modern industrial technological capitalism, monopoly, the Gilded Age. You guys don't know all that stuff. But it doesn't happen all the time. And the problem is we get into our comfort zone and into our routines, whether we make a complaint about something, but we don't really see the dynamism. But, you know, historically speaking, there are certain points in time when the opening presents itself. And if we don't run through it, then we can't be complaining down the road. And that happens a lot. We miss our opportunity because we get like kind of mesmerized and not energized by the stuff that's happening in our daily lives. And we forget that holy heck. Well, I'm trying not to cuss here.
We can always edit. We can always edit.
Okay, good. I'll be bleeped. Well, and so my point is not to be too long-winded, but certain avenues present themselves, but it's not automatic because institutions are obdurate and they're stubborn and they will be what they will be. And so if you want them to change, if you want to turn that giant wheel, you got to put your shoulder to the wheel.
And like currently we're kind of we have a very dynamic political landscape right now, and we're dealing with a lot of different issues. I mean, I think like every year we seem to have something different that happens, but this particular year has been like hitting us with so many different things. We have the pandemic, and then like when Black Lives Matter was going on during like towards the end of the Obama administration, it's starting to like resurface, and this race and equity question is starting to just be like a priority now. And especially now that we're kind of going into this hard shift of the economy because of the pandemic. What do you think is like the main issues, driving voters to the poll? What do you think is that idea? And I want to go ahead and give Professor Fuentes a chance to go ahead and maybe give his thoughts.
That's a great question. I think you alluded to some of the points there. It's kind of like a perfect storm where you have a lot of things coming at you at once, and that is 2020 per se, right? When you look at the perspective of the COVID crisis, right? I mean, it kind of alludes back to why is it important, your local elections, state elections. Well, I mean, unfortunately, COVID-19 has kind of exposed our system, our federal system, where the federal government has power, but the states have powers as well. And we're seeing this with education. We're seeing this with first responders, frontliners, and all that. There really isn't one unit, right? One uniform unit going in the same direction. That's problematic. Second, as you alluded to Black Lives Matter, I think you look at the civil rights, you look at the progressive era. I mean, these are all events, that have shaped, America. And I do say shaped, but at the same time, I think that it's literally kind of peeling back a layer of America that's still there, unfortunately, and, being from, one of the biggest cities in the nation, being raised here and so forth, living here most of my whole life, I know it's a little different in the Valley, but I mean, you tend to see it more, you trying to understand it more here, because it is more, more prevalent here. And regarding, the presidential election, as you alluded as well, you have two totally different candidates. But if you look at, I know Dr. Selber said it as well, but back in the 2016 election, you kind of see some of the similarities, but I think you see a lot of differences as well, in the fact that you now have a huge wave coming. Okay, this is what the early voter turnout is. I think we're at about north of 30 million. Okay, and you got to understand, we're looking at what was the total voter turnout? A little over 100 million in 2016. I mean, you're almost halfway there. Okay, and we're only doing it 2 weeks. Harris County, where I reside. I mean, we broke the record, I think the first day or two, that all that we had in 2016. So you have to ask yourself, I mean, well, I guess in this day and age, you don't really ask yourself because it's all over the news, social media, podcasts such as this one. Everybody's engaged. Everybody knows what's going on. But I think more importantly, everybody knows what's at stake. Okay. Everybody knows what's at stake. And the majority of the country wants to go one way, but you're always going to have the minority in anything and everything. And they obviously want to go the other way. So I think that those, if you add them all up, it's a perfect storm for what's about to happen. That's what I believe in.
Absolutely well said. Perfect storm mentality, that motif is totally true. I tend to look at it exactly as you do. And also one of the things that keeps occurring to me is that, you have people who are single issue voters, and they're going to vote on that one thing. But in this election, I think that, all the issues that we've named are important, and they're the parts, but the whole to me is a vibe. Okay. And I'm speaking personally, I'm not trying to reinvent the world, but the vibe is anxious and the vibe is unhappy. We're not happy with the way we're relating to one another. We're not happy with the way we relate to government and vice versa, particularly vice versa. And so I think that groundswell of unhappiness and dissatisfaction is coming to a head in this perfect storm that you talk about, Dr. Fuentes. So to me, I see it in my classes all the time. There's just a vibe or a feel that this is not what we want to be. And so we're talking about national identity here. And we're trying, and that's it's elusive, and it's kind of a dynamic, nebulous thing like public opinion, right? But at the same time, there's a general feel, and it's not just restricted to the left, I don't think, Believe me, right now the Republican Party is going through preparing for what could be a crushing defeat. And you know what Packer would say is that good, because they haven't done the things they said they were going to do, and they haven't acted the way they say they were going to act. And you can say that for any party. I'm not trying to stump for a group, but I guess my point is that the vibe, you know, the parts that add up to the whole are race and police and economics and inequality, absolutely hugely important, abortion, you name it. But the general feel is that we need to get back to being what Americans say they are. And that includes, like you said, Dr. Fuentes, living up to our ideals, which we've not always done. And so peeling back the layer, as you say, and revealing the fact that there's still inconsistencies and still things that are bothering a large number of people. And if things are bothering people, hey, okay. But if things are bothering people because they feel that because of who they are, they're not getting an opportunity to do what they need, that's a problem. And it's a problem that every person in this United States needs to address. At first by voting, next by volunteering. Hey, if you take to the streets, I'm not certainly calling for that, but I mean, that's a way of making your dissatisfaction felt. And I'm not trying to, you know, go to the ramparts of the barricades here, but I think the vibe is negative, and I think everybody knows it, and I think it's on both sides. So let's see if we can't get back to a little bit more comity, a little bit more collaboration, and a little bit more feeling for other people who maybe not as fortunate as we are.
You know, real quick, I wanted to just jump in, and I'm glad you brought that up, Dr. Selber. Just talking about the vibe, right? And even talking about your own students, because I've always felt like there is the climate that exists, right? The larger climate, but then within it, in our classes, you know, and I you know, work primarily with first year students. They're much quieter. They're much like I have a harder time getting a pulse on that vibe. And so even this year, they're a little louder. I've seen more interactions in terms of, you know, is it too late to get registered to vote? Where can I go vote? Things like that. But it's subtle. So I'm glad I wanted to know, like, just what's the feeling you're getting from your own classes and your own students? Because, you know, because I think sometimes, you know, at least my student population tends to be a little more subtle, a little quiet. You know, I have a hard time getting that pulse from them.
You're right on. Definitely. You're right on. Yeah, you're right on. And going back to what Dr. Selber said, it's a wave. It's the excitement. It's in the air.
Yeah.
And look back at 2016. I always ask my students, because they were always asking me, you know, how did Hillary lose, you know, and how did, you know, Trump win? Let me ask you a question. Let me ask you two questions. What was Trump's campaign slogan?
Make America Great.
Everybody knows that.
Yeah.
What was Hillary Clinton's slogan? Thank you. Next question. There you go. You see, and it's the candidate, it's the politician, it's a lot of things. I worked in a few campaigns, and you saw the excitement, whether it was not good excitement, as Dr. Selber says, you look at both sides. That's what we do. We're supposed to do as professors, you know, and you saw it coming. I mean, and that's what I'm saying. You see it now, but I mean, I think Biden is like the luckiest candidate in the history of presidential elections. All he has to do is just literally if you can walk across the finish line, it should be, you know, it should, keyword should. But you look at it now and yeah, and you know, our students, is Professor Nickerson still on?
Yes. Yeah.
I might get in trouble here. So, you know, first days of class, going over the syllabus and, you know, the structure of the class, assignments and whatnot, you know, and the students are already asking just right away, boom, they want to know what's going on. Can I register to vote? They want to know all about, you know, the drive-in voting, and I was giving them the locations, and I mean, it's great. It's a great feeling. And then this evening tonight, you guys want to join us? We're going to do a live broadcast of or live streaming of the final debate. If it happened right at this point, you never know.
You know, I think also, Joe, it has a lot to do with what classes you teach. For instance, this semester I'm doing a class on capitalism and communication. And people have been waiting for that one, even though it's me. They've been waiting for it for a while. And my graduate class is political communication. Of course, I, you know, really looked ahead at the schedule and said, let me just throw this stuff in there because, yeah, you're right.
You have to. You have to. And that's on you, Dr. Selber. That's what a good professor does. I mean, we're looking at the events going on, and that's one thing, you know, and it kind of goes back to what you said regarding the, you know, the excitement our students engaged. I mean, they want to talk about, you know, the elections and voting. I'm like, well, that's chapter 3, but yeah, we're definitely gonna move it up because, I mean, they want it, you know, and it's up to us to be able to mix and match, and, you know, just make this an experience. And I always said my goal is to make them understand, have them understand, walk away from the class with things they're going to understand and use for the rest of their life. But also, we can't do that unless we connect. We connect what's going on out there, making it interesting and showing them, you know, proving to them that, hey, this is important, it matters, and you will be able to use it for the rest of your life. So that's always a good thing for us.
Yeah. And, you know, the thing is, like you said, they want to skip to chapter 3. In my graduate class, we started with political philosophy, the ancient Greeks, you know, the Arab civilizations, and, you know, Africa. You know, looking at how people conceptualize how we shall be governed. What is the role of people in government? But they wanted to jump right into the debates. We watched the vice presidential debate live, and let me tell you, I have to admit, I was falling on the floor when the fly landed. That was one of the greatest moments in the history of television right there, dude. I couldn't believe it. I was like, you're kidding me. I mean, there's a novel there, man. There's a novella right there, man. That was amazing. I'll tell you what.
Yeah, you know, like when I saw that too, it was just like, it was almost like how long we almost wanted to play a game, like how long is it going to stay there, and ended up staying there for a very long time. It was like almost like clocking at the 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and I was like, Jesus. And it was like, when is it going to go away? I almost was like shushing the TV.
Did you see her with Rachel Maddow? Talking to Kamala Harris about that, and she was trying to get her to say, did you ever feel like you want to reach over and just, you know? And of course, she's cool because she's cool as a cucumber, but it was funny because she wanted her to say, yeah, we're going to knock this shit out of that guy. Oh, crazy.
I wanted to touch on, sorry about that. I wanted to touch on the whole idea of that enthusiasm your students are having. And, you know, the whole voter turnout, we're hitting like record highs in voter turnout. We're almost, you know, I can't say a number. I don't want to be incorrect on it, but, you know, if you look at any article right now and you search online, you're going to be seeing that like a lot of different states are hitting record highs, especially here in Texas. And what can we do to like continue that enthusiasm for our students? Because I think, you know, as this election is happening, you know, we're living through this like pandemic, we're living through all these issues, and we're seeing it happen. What could we do for students that will help them continue that, and to not just look at the top of the ticket with the presidential elections, but like local elections, because local elections happen every year, and it seems to be forgotten or just like overlooked because we have, you know, elections for board members, we have local elections. Like, how can we get students involved in those particular types of community events? And anyone can take this one. And it's probably a very difficult question because, like, how do you rally these people? And how do you rally the students?
I think it rests on our shoulders,
right?
As teachers, you know, in high school or professors at the colleges and universities. I mean, I think we have to engage them. You know, we have to, you know, it's just like another class, you know, where you have to make it interesting and, you know, kind of do hands-on activities. You know, for example, like, you know, one of the things that's so exciting about doing, you know, or having a class in you know, in a presidential election is being able to kind of, you know, go fishing with these students, and you're going to hook them with the presidential election. But that's when we have them and say, look, this is a very important election, but, you know, are your parents affected? Do you have, you know, a brother, somebody affected by COVID? Do you have somebody affected by, you know, by the racial tensions and so forth? Those are federal in the grand scope, but they're all local. They're all, you know, state. They're all, you know, state issues where those are the elections that really affect us every single day. And I tell them, you know, they're called first responders for a reason. You know, if your house burns down or something happens, you know, the federal government is not going to come in. It's going to be the state and local, right? Those are the first things we always want to tell. And I think honestly too, you go back to, again, it goes back to the excitement. What candidates, are running? Are we getting excited about these candidates? You had Obama, very exciting. Hillary Clinton, and that's why I said, what was her campaign slogan? You had Donald Trump running. The excitement was in the air, and I think that's something that, if you look at those two levels, those two aspects of it, I think you can, understand. And we as a community, whether it's local and state, and certainly around the nation, if we can follow those plans, those ideas, I guarantee you, man, these students will be very, very heavily engaged, and they will want to skip chapter 1 and 2 and go straight through to the meat. That's great. Good question.
Here's what I think. We talk a lot about politics. We talk a lot about the news. And yet one of the areas that I think is sometimes overlooked, that is adding to the groundswell of excitement and of knowledge among young people, is culture. And so what I mean by that is, all you got to do is go scroll down on the documentaries on Netflix. Listen to some of the music that's being produced right now. Look at the shows that are being made. Look at what the films are all about. Yeah. So, my undergraduate class watched Modern Times, a Charlie Chaplin film from way back, which was kind of this crypto anti-capitalist movie that was made at the time of the Depression, and it was phenomenal. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that, if you want people to get involved on a long-term basis and play the long game, then like you said, Joe, they have to have a stake in it. Rousseau, back in the ancient times, we talked about this idea of the general will. Whereas if people feel that they're stakeholders in the government and the way the polity works, and they feel their voices are being heard, and they see the results of possibly being participatory, then they'll start to obey themselves, because they made the general will of public opinion known, and it was manifest in the policies of the government in a free society, right? So I think that cultural artifacts can play a huge part in teaching people how to think about issues. Because the thing is, man, we can lecture all day until we're blue in the face, and the kids dig it to an extent. But when they go out from the class and they do their own thing, and they're still getting a drumbeat of, hey, change needs to happen or change doesn't need to happen, and they will become stakeholders, and they will. Now, I'm not saying that everybody's going to vote in local elections every time. So I would have to say that there's a personal responsibility not to be lazy there, because we get fired up by the big marquee matchups. It's like everybody wants to watch the Patriots play and the Rams, but nobody wants to watch the Cardinals, right? So if you're a football fan, you got to watch, you got to do that thing. So I think the older people get, and you said it too, when you're starting to pay taxes, man, you're going to pay more attention to local stuff. When you're 20 and living in this fantasy bubble, and I'm not trying to be picky or ugly, I'm just saying that, when you don't have to carry as much of a burden, then you don't want to read about taxes. What taxes? I just want to make my grades and have a good time. Yeah. But this is a generation of more politically motivated people, and for a lot of different reasons, particularly in areas which are heavily Latino. And so when people see what's in it for them, and I don't mean in a greedy way, but in like take a stakeholders way, then hopefully they'll start to do more things like vote and volunteer and give time and give money, etc. And so it builds on itself, and all of a sudden you have a habit that you didn't even know you built. And you're part of the conversation instead of just complaining after the fact with a tweet.
Yeah, and I'd like to add to that. So stakeholders, that's incredible. Having ownership, and I think that there's no better example of that right now going on than, and I'm going to call it what it is, the voter suppression, it's 2020, Georgia citizens, 11 hours, I think was the record, 11 hours to vote.
What is this, dance contest? Good Lord, yeah.
11, 10 hours. I mean, in Texas, you guys know, Governor Abbott, right? There's one election ballot box per county. Being in Harris County, we have 4 or 5 million people. I mean, that's insane. So I was one to it's sad. It's bothersome. And it just, again, it peels back that layer, like, you would have thought that we were past that. We're not. It's in plain daylight now. But then you see the response. So I was nervous, I was like, wow, this is not going to be a fair election. And I'm not saying it is still yet, it's still a little early. But to see the record turnout, I mean, that's not because, they just had an epiphany like, oh, yeah, we're going to go vote. Like, people are angry. They're excited. They want change. And like the professor says, they want to be a part of that change.
And when you're mad, then you're probably going to do something. You're probably going to act. Suppression, look, any country in the world has dealt with a history of an attempts by the powers that be to limit the powers of the people that don't be, right? And so, in the old days, it was a poll tax or a literacy test or all these other things, physical intimidation. But people, like you said, who think that that kind of quasi-suppression and obstruction doesn't take place today, haven't been paying attention. And I couldn't agree with you more. When people see some wrong being done, you got a lot of choices. You can just say, wow, that's too bad. Or, man, okay, sucks to be them. Or you can say, you know what? I'm going to find a way. Right. We're going to make this happen.
And that's that's sewn in the fabrics of, the United States of America. There's always going to be people standing up. There's always going to be that voice. There's always going to be your Lincolns, your Dr. Kings, and your Cesar Chavez. There's always going to be people that rise up and lead the way.
That's a great point. And I want to ask you, if you don't mind, charismatic leadership is, I wouldn't say that it's missing or lacking, but I'm waiting, is a comment and a statement, as is my want. I'm waiting for that young charismatic leadership, because I hear a lot of people that are interested, and I see a lot of bright ass kids. But will they then become the leaders of tomorrow? Because like I said, it's easy to stay on the sidelines and point fingers, get in the echo chamber and say, we're good, they're crappy, in group, out group. And then they're out there. Where are the young people of any group we're talking about? These days, anybody, man, somebody lead us a little bit. That's what I'm asking for. And let me respect you. I don't have to love you. I don't care about that. But I just have to know that at the end of the day, I feel like you got my back, and that you got the back of 330 million people, not in a partisan way, although we all know it works that way. But where is the person, and I'm not saying third way or some obscure, where are the people, the leadership group, and it may be in the Congress right now, it may be in the House. I'm not trying to tell you any names, but where are the young people who understand the vibe and are willing to work for as many of us as possible, almost in an old-fashioned utilitarian way? Yeah, my dad used to say 70% of something's better than 100% of nothing. Yeah. But today, what we have in politics is zero sum, my side against your side, Manichaeanism, and everybody ends up losing because we don't feel together no more.
That's right. Yeah, definitely. And that's so true. And sad, but that's what it's come to. I was looking back at the early 2000s when parties were voting. I mean, it was close. It was 50-40, and now it's 50-0, 53-0. It's just like, wow, this is incredible. But I mean, it doesn't. I think everybody's already kind of caught on as to what the issues are, what the issue really is. I mean, it's, as you said, somebody's got to come out from. I mean, at this point, any party, your party, and just rally the troops. We're all on the same team at the end of the day. We should be.
Help us, anybody help us! We're doomed.
And that's why we say we got to engage our students. From the school standpoint, the community standpoint, to make them understand, to make them believe that, hey, after college, you can go work for the government. You can work in public office instead of just going the traditional route. I mean, that's why we're really big on internships for my students. I'm not sure. Jerry had asked the other day, but yeah, interning with your congressman or your congresswoman, at the state level or United States Congress level. I mean, there's all these opportunities out there, but they're just not getting the information across. That's a big thing, I think.
Yeah. Nick, you were going to weigh in.
Yeah, I was going to just kind of add to that, because I'm a part of a couple of groups and there are a couple of nonprofits. And, it seems to be a problem when it comes to talking about someone's work. And I think people become very critical on the work that they put in, and it's just not this shared experience now. It's not this thing that we are coming together. It's about what I have done for the community, and it's about me personally, and it's kind of like this individualism. And I think even that article that you sent me touched on that. And it's just like, what have I done? I've done this, I've done that, I've been part of all these different communities, but like, what's the bigger picture? Where are we supposed to have our focus on? And I've always tried to make light of that particular issue. And when I talk to my, colleagues per se, I tell them, like, why can't we bring these two groups together? Why can't we not get this nonprofit and our nonprofit and bring our resources together to, have this kind of movement, this kind of change? And I think as this election kind of rounds out, I think people are kind of becoming, like you said, more aware of that particular issue. I kind of wanted to talk on swing states. I know Texas is kind of like that teetering state that's, between the two parties. And I want your maybe your thoughts on it, but at the same time, what do you think of this two-party system? Do you think maybe it one day should change to maybe like ranked choice system, like the ranked choice voting? I've read a couple of things on it, and they mentioned how ranked choice voting, you kind of vote for all the people that are on the ballot, and as you go down the ballot, it's kind of driven off. So like the lowest person gets some of the top person's votes. So do you think a different type of system would be kind of better for us to be equally represented? And anyone could take this.
Joe, this is your bailiwick. I think.
I was gonna say, man, don't let me go first because I'm gonna go off.
Go ahead.
Go off.
Okay. All right. Get comfortable, man. Get comfortable. So, yeah, I mean, a two-party system. I mean, I always ask the students, okay, so you have two choices in everything. How would life be? Okay, you want a hamburger? You have Wendy's and Whataburger. That's it. Okay, you want to go grocery shopping? You have H-E-B and Walmart. That's it. Okay, those are examples. I mean, it's just not. It's not the way it should be, And you don't have to, again, going from a historical perspective. I'm a constitutional person, and even George Washington, he despised political parties. He said they're factions. They're not going to act in the primary interest of the citizens, the ones who are to be governed. They gave him a duty, an honor to govern them, and political parties at the end of the day, what are they most interested in? And fast forward, how much money does it cost? You guys see record amounts of fundraising. I mean, it cost over $1 billion. Okay, I'm gonna go down the list here. $1 billion, over $1 billion. For the White House, okay? A U.S. Senate seat, now northwards of 20 to 50 million, okay? A U.S. Congress seat, two years, northward of $1 million, okay? So how does that happen? Again, it's, I'm a world traveler, you go to Europe and all these other countries, I mean, you have green parties that are very serious, they have chances. You have various parties to choose from. But at the end of the day, I mean, is party the answer? I mean, for me, it's not. I think that you go in there, you run as an individual on your record. It's kind of like, I don't see it any different as being a candidate for an opportunity for employment. You're running on your resume. You're going to have an interview. In this case, we have 3 interviews for the nation, for the world, and let them choose, let them select. I think that would be, obviously I'm dreaming, but that's really the way our system is, and that's why I say you have to understand the way the system works. In America for sure, in any country, but certainly our country, you have to understand the way the system works. First of all, you won't be lost. Second of all, you can actually go and do something about it. I think that's a really, really big thing where we lose a lot of students. And it's all in how you teach them and how you show them that, the system is set up the way it is for a reason. And people always, say that, well, we have a democracy. Well, in actuality, we have a constitutional republic. Okay, we don't vote on every single issue because the founding fathers didn't want that, and they didn't want that for a reason. And I think we're seeing some of it now.
Scared of factions and scared of the mob, right?
Yeah, yes, sir. Yeah,
I'll tell you what,
that's what we have today.
Those are very well-spoken points. The thing is, a system is a system. And so basically some parts of the American system, I always call it not just democracy, but democratic capitalism.
There you go.
That's our system.
Yeah.
In other words, for us to tweak the system or make reforms, such as in the Progressive Era or the Great Society, that's a good lick, right? But there's nothing written in stone that says that the system that we were born with is a system that we'll die with. And so, you know, the Constitution is a dynamic thing, supposedly, if it's interpreted correctly. The laws change, people's values change. And so, you know, some people are talking about the Supreme Court. They're talking about the Electoral College. They're talking about all these different tweaks to the system. But there are some members of Congress right now and a lot of people on the street that are starting to talk about real systemic change. And that doesn't mean, you know, just changing the system. It means changing systems. And so I'm going to tell you that I think, without being too ridiculous here, that it may be a dream and maybe a nightmare to some, but don't think that because we happen to have been doing something for 200 and something years, that is a poop in the windstorm in the grand scheme of historical things. And quite frankly, there's nothing that says that we can't decide all of a sudden, hey, wait a minute. If all these things are endemic or systemic or structural, then maybe we need a new structure. Maybe we need a new system. So not just another party, although, you know, I'd be open to and amenable to the idea of a third party, but they're all parties. And I think that's where you began, Joe. They're all parties within the same rubric. They all do things a certain way based on the institutional powers that be and the rules that we have. They are supposed to be dynamic because everything's supposed to be a living document, man. So, you know, I'm not saying we need to run out and get the pitchforks. That's the funny phrase I use with my kids, but it happens all the time. I mean, look what's happening in Mali right now. Look what's happening in Name the Country, dude. I mean, you know, we had this kind of conceit that, well, you know, we've got the checks and balances and the bicameral. Okay, yeah, that's good. That makes sense. But if it don't work no more, then we're stupid to keep doing it.
And we're seeing it now, how it's not working with one president. Yes.
So if it's not, put it this way, if it's user error, then get rid of the user, okay?
That's right.
But if it's a system mistake, then there ain't nothing that says that we can't say, hey, instead of just moving it this way, let's try it this way. Let's try what Sweden does. Of course, on the other hand, they have 9 people who are all related and are all rich, so it's not a problem.
That's right.
I don't know. So in other words, be careful what we wish for.
And you mentioned the Electoral College. So it kind of goes back to your swing state question. If you look back at the Electoral College, I mean, originally, you know, everybody was selected a certain way. Direct elections, but the office of the presidency was never that way. Okay, and what was the reason? Okay, again, it was, our country was set up this way for a reason. You know, the founding fathers realized, wait a minute, the most powerful office selected by the people and only the people.
Who knows what we'll get? We may get Andrew Jackson.
Yeah, the 1% is going to lose control. How does the 1% govern the 99%? Easy. You set up the rules. You make the game, right? That you invent it, and that's what's been going on. And the Electoral College, as scary as it is, and as crazy as it is, all you got to do is look back at our history. Okay.
1824.
If you look at George Bush Gore in 2000. Okay, Gore got more popular votes. Okay. But Bush got the White House. Okay, that's a whole nother story. And with Hillary Clinton as well. You know, so, and I think we can all agree on the jobs or where we stand with both those presidents, Bush and Trump. And is it a coincidence that they lost the popular vote? They were not voted on by the majority. I mean, that's not a coincidence. I mean, the system, there's something seriously wrong with the system. And like a lot of things have changed, it can change. And by gosh, hopefully we do experience some of those changes in our lifetimes.
So, so we're actually rounding out towards the end of our podcast. We actually have another podcast coming up that we need to record. Yeah. So we're rounding up towards the end, but I kind of wanted to just ask you if you have any final thoughts, maybe so you can give to first-time voters. Are there any like final words so they can, you know, get the courage to like get out there and vote?
Yes. Take responsibility and do the right things. And that's not just a moral judgment, that's a civic judgment. So your responsibility is to be part of the game. Don't be a complainer without doing some work. Get off your tush and go volunteer and go be part of the game and go learn and read and be. Look, if you're engaged in life and you do your best and you take a shot and it don't work out, that's cool. That's what it's all about. Nobody wins all the time. But if you don't do something, then your complaints will ring very hollow to them people that did get out and work. I'll give you this example, the Chicano movement. Everybody came to the Friday night meeting. Hey, that's this and that. And then on Saturday, 3 people showed up to make posters. Well, golly, where was everybody that was fired up last night? Everybody wants to talk. And, you know, the people that work will be able to lay their head down on the pillow at night and say they did the best they could. Because you know what? Things won't change. The system will not be altered if people just kind of go on automatic pilot and say, well, I don't really like that. Well, then let's see what we can do about things. And I'm not being partisan. I'm just talking about it in general. That's what I would say. Very
well put. Yeah. If I could say something, I always look at it like this, you know, do it for the ones who sacrifice for the life that we have today, especially if you're a minority, woman, Black, Hispanic, you know, now with you know, the gay movement and so forth. Do it for the ones who paved the way for us, right? And also do it for the ones that are coming after us. We want to always hand them something better. Okay, at least where I'm from. And second, you always want to hit them in the pockets because that's what gets people's attention. Just look around, and if you can't look around, research it. It is no coincidence that places with the highest voter turnout, they are listened to more. They have more things around, more commerce, more things to do, more opportunities. Okay, that's not by accident, because politicians know, especially local and state, they know who's voting and who's not. And when you vote, whether your candidate wins or not, that's important. But the most important thing is your area, you are voting, and they know that people who vote ask questions. And if you ask questions, you expect accountability. And you want accountability, and that's what politicians need more than anything.
As the old rednecks used to say, the squeaky wheel gets the grease.
That's right.
Well, I would like to thank our guest, Dr. Gregory Selber, and Professor Jose Fuentes from Lone Star College. I just want to reiterate what you just said. I really do appreciate all those fine thoughts. It is really about getting out the vote and to represent what we believe in. And there are many people on the ground. There are many people out there that are doing a lot of different work. So when you look at a party, you're not just looking at the president, you're looking at everyone else who represents us. So I'd like to thank our guests again for joining us to the FYE podcast. And I would like everyone to have a wonderful day. Thanks.